Hi, I'm Tim, and welcome to Watch One. Thanks for logging on. Today, we're looking at a special Rolex Cosmograph Daytona reference 116528. This is, in many ways, a modern-day nod and a wink by Rolex Geneva to its famed exotic dial or Paul Newman variants. Now, the Paul Newmans were early Rolex Daytona references from roughly 1963 into the mid to late 70s. An example of a exotic dial included characteristics in common with a model personally owned by Paul Newman. His was a reference 6239, but it featured a unique, especially in its earliest versions, a unique tritone dial that collectors initially in the Italian market and eventually globally associated with Paul Newman and the motorsports genesis of the Rolex Daytona model. Now, in the early 2000s, after releasing its six-digit reference in-house movement Cosmograph Daytona, which is what you see here, Rolex released in the gold examples these tritone dials that many enthusiasts noted resembled the Daytona Paul Newmans in several important respects, principally the use of high contrast, the use of the tritone, and Rolex didn't help matters or dissuade opinions by adding a suffix to the end of every six-digit reference featuring this dial, including the consecutive letters PN. So that's a nod and a wink from Rolex, if ever there was one. Well, Rolex does not do tribute watches in the strictest sense. This may be the closest you'll ever see to a factory tribute watch by Rolex to one of its historic models. Everything about this watch screams motorsports. Now, well, you might argue, what does a gold luxury watch have to do with getting down and dirty in the pits? I would argue everything. Motorsports is the sport of kings, and if you're going to have a watch designed for racing, the 24 Hours of Daytona especially, where this is the winner's gift, it may as well be a high-end luxury model, and it may as well be flamboyant, because after all, what's louder than a race car? Now, the Cosmograph Daytona as of 2000 featured Rolex's own in-house movement, caliber 4130. This was the first time since the very first Daytonas in 1963 that you had a Rolex movement in the Rolex watch. Why is that? Well, a couple of reasons. First and foremost, because chronographs are incredibly difficult to build. To construct one from start to finish can take, well, the better part of a decade. In fact, even with computer-assisted design and computer-assisted modeling, it took Rolex roughly 6 years from initial patents to final market launch to construct the caliber 4130. But it was worth the effort. After years of modifying other movements, notably the Zenith El Primero, to Rolex specifications and chronometer grade, Rolex finally brought the whole operation in-house to produce the first Cosmograph that was Rolex through and through. And let's talk a little bit about that movement, because it's really what defines the six-digit reference Cosmograph Daytona. Now, the 4130 improves on the Zenith in almost every substantive way. First and foremost, let's talk about shock resistance. While Rolex still uses its free-sprung escapement with a handmade Breguet overcoil hairspring, the bottom line is it's now a parachrom blue unit, which gives you three advantages. Still handmade, the bottom line is that you have resistance to temperature variation, so if you're going to be in cold or hot climates, it's not going to materially change the timing of your watch. It is more shock resistant. It's also 10 times more resistant to magnetism than the old hairsprings used in the Zenith-powered Cosmograph. Why do you need that? Well, because modern computerized households and offices, subwoofers, computer stacks, servers, wiring looms, if you're ever around those can magnetize the hairspring of an automatic mechanical watch and significantly alter its timing. Rolex gives you that first line of defense with parachrom blue, but against actual physical shocks, they give you another line of defense with the 4130 in-house caliber, a full balance bridge. Now, if you've ever seen the single-sided, quote, balance cock that holds the balance wheel out as it oscillates at the end of a cantilevered object, well, a full balance bridge anchored on both sides is more secure, holding the balance at the center. That'd be roughly where my thumbnails overlap there. You have dual anchoring points. It's better at attenuating shock and maintaining the rate of the balance without upsetting it as you go through the motions wearing this on your wrist, because after all, Rolex is a sports watch, the Daytona is a sports watch. This is your everyday watch. This is not going to be one that goes back in the box when you want to jump in the pool or hit the beach. Yes, it's a gold watch, but no, it doesn't have to be babied, and the movement reflects that. Significantly, Rolex increased the power reserve of the watch. That is how long it can be off your wrist between maximum wind and rundown by 20 hours, from 52 hours with the El Primero-based 40-30 movement to 72 hours with the 41-30. That's what you get here. So that means you can take this watch off on Friday night if you want to put on your beater watch. You can put on that G-Shock, you can get rough and ready, you can destroy it at the beach, at the pool table. It doesn't matter. Put this one back on your wrist Monday morning. It's still going. No need to reset. But there is one final refinement over the old Zenith that really defines this watch more than any of the others, and that's the switch to a vertical clutch coupling. Now, when you start a Zenith El Primero powered Daytona, you will see the hand, the seconds hand, the chronograph seconds hand, you will see it jump about 1 second. Now, what good is a high beat movement if you're going to have inherent inaccuracy when it starts and stops and resets? The vertical clutch allows you to get a precise start, stop, and reset every time, plus it also allows you to run the chronograph 24 hours a day if you so choose, without any hazard to the movement, without running it down, without wearing it in undue fashion, and the movement itself is far more serviceable, including the vertical clutch, than the old El Primero, making it far easier on watchmakers. So that's what's under the hood. This quintessential motorsports watch has plenty going on within the body and the chassis. Let's take a look at the case. 18-karat yellow gold, alternate polished and brushed finish. This is a watch that makes a definite statement. It has huge presence. Let me show it to you on my wrist. 6 1/3 inches, 16 centimeters, that's my wrist. 40 millimeters, that's the case. But you can see that this watch wears bigger, both in terms of its visual impression and in terms of the feel on the wrist. That's a lot of gold. It's not oppressively heavy, but you definitely have a sense of wearing something of high quality, something with a real premium pull to it, that mass of precious metal. Because it has a full bracelet and a large milled oyster clasp at the bottom, it's well balanced, so it doesn't want to hula hoop on the wrist. It doesn't want to turn my wrist over. I feel like both sides are nicely counterweighted against each other. The combination of the yellow gold, those contrasting sub-registers, index and hands, and that deep dark black dial gives this one a lot of impact. This is like a lightning bolt on your wrist. This thing is not going to be missed. It's not anonymous. This is a watch for a confident person. This is an extrovert watch. Like I said, it makes a statement. Make sure you're ready for it, because this one pulls no punches. As a visual statement, I would say it's every inch the equal of the Lange Datograph that I showed earlier. It's less discreet. It's definitely more Rolex. If the Lange is German, I would say this one is distinctly more Francophone. Rolex Geneva versus Lange Saxony. This is the Rolex look. If you want it, you got it. 6-digit reference. This is the 116528. This is the modern rendition of what's known as the Paul Newman dial. Again, this is not a historic Paul Newman like the exotic dials of the 60s and 70s. This is rather Rolex's nod and a wink tribute to that style. Evocative of vintage, but with all the modern refinements. This watch is also a 100% complete set and available on our website, Watch You Want. Having been purchased this year, 2015, it retains the balance of Rolex's 2-year factory warranty, so it's really the best of every world. A look that's evocative of vintage with all the technology of a modern watch, available immediately with full factory warranty. This Rolex Cosmograph Daytona 116528 Paul Newman can be seen on our website, Watch You Want.